I just wish that parents would stop and look at their children. Just look at their children and love on them while they're still here. Love on them.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. And I'm excited to have somebody on the podcast today who I met not too long ago. And Sarah, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
This has been a big shift in our journey as Fatherhood Voices has metamorphosed into not only something for fathers, but also for mothers dealing with narcissists and piece of shit dads, I like to call them. And even children, they're struggling to try to find out how to connect with their parents, and especially their fathers. So you have a very, I would like to say unique story, but unfortunately, it seems to be a common denominator that's happening in today's day and age, and not only in today's day and age, but also over the past couple of generations. So what I want to do, Sarah, is just have you introduce yourself, where you're from, where you grew up at, and then we'll kind of start to dive into what early childhood looked like for you.
Okay. Well, my name is Sarah, and I was born and raised in Oxnard, California. I was born to my mom, Peggy, my father, David, which they called him Micey. He was not an active father, I guess you can say. So my childhood, I was basically raised with my grandparents and my aunts. My mom had to work full-time job. So I was always with other or family members, you could say.
Okay. And, Fatherhood Voices was created because my story was I wasn't there for my kids. I wasn't present. And I was, if you look up in the dictionary, narcissist, yeah, I think my picture's still in there, unless it's been replaced by somebody else. But unfortunately, I own my truth. And, that was part of my journey. When you say that your dad wasn't active in your life, what does that mean?
So he was a truck driver. He was an alcoholic. He did do drugs. So that was his happy. Even though he had children, he wasn't very active. It was always, him and my mom got divorced when I was like 8 months old. So I never had a chance to live with him or experience him. He would pick us up here or there. It was never constant in my life. So I resented him for that. Where my older sister had a better connection with him. So he only wanted to be with her. So it never bothered me though as a kid because I always had my family. So I wasn't missing that part as a child because I had my grandfather, I had my uncles, I had my aunts, I had a family. So it was just, oh, okay, yeah, that's my dad. He's doing, it just wasn't never, if I wanted to find my dad, I knew to go look for him at the yard with his friends and where he parked his truck. Never did he come look for us. And again, it was just constant. There was no consistency with him. We never knew when he was going to come. We never anything. So once I turned 7, my mom remarried. And so my stepdad took that role on as my father. And still till this day, he is my father, but back to my father, when I turned 19 is when I started getting the connection with my dad again.
Let me stop you there.
Okay.
You said some things that are very powerful, so I want to just go back to them. And the one thing I want you to know, Sarah, is a lot of people come on the podcast because this is a part of their healing. Because tonight, some emotions are going to be resurrected that you're probably going to have to sit with, and they probably make you spiral. They are going to make you spiral, but that's okay because that's part of peeling the layers to start to heal. And that's, number one is forgiving yourself, and then find it in your heart to forgive your father, when you're ready. And it may happen in this lifetime, it may not. So I just want you to know that, if you start to feel like, oh my gosh, maybe this wasn't the right thing to do, this is just, it's part of the journey. And there's a reason that we're sitting here tonight. And I truly believe that it's going to be a big part of your healing. Okay. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you. And this is true because for so many years, I never looked back on that. As an adult, I never held on to that hurt. I've always just kind of had blinders, you know what I mean? And just went with the flow of everyday life. When my real dad passed away, that's when it hurt me. And I was expressing that with Diane, when they were putting him in the hearse, like that's where the emotion, I'm never going to get him back. I'm never going to see him again. I'm never going to have that relationship again with my father.
And going back to where it all started is going to be important because there's going to be some fathers that aren't in their children's life right now. And your words may spark just a little bit of hope that maybe it's time to choose a different path, or vice versa. It may be for some children out there whose fathers aren't in their life and they can see how to navigate through. And you said something that was very important, and something I talk about a lot is, unfortunately, there's a lot of men that do not step up to step into the role as a father. And one of the things that I share is that just because your biological father doesn't step up, it doesn't mean that you still can't have a father in your life. And that could be an uncle, a grandfather, a coach, a teacher, somebody that you respect, that you lean on towards guidance, and that's going to take an interest in you. So just because biological fathers, if you choose not to step up, it's okay, because there's going to be a man that's going to step up, and it may be your fucking brother, or it may be some other man, but somebody's going to step up and is going to love your child if you don't have the balls to step up and do that. So sorry, I get very passionate about this. And you had other people in your life, family member that stepped up. But growing up as a little girl, as little Sarah, did you ever experience that void? And a big part of it is, and I'm going to say schools, because schools don't do this intentionally, but they have father-daughter dances, or they have father-daughter breakfasts and other things. And then what about the children whose fathers aren't in their life and don't even have family members that step up? Did you experience that as a child? Like, where's my father and why isn't he, here?
I didn't even have my mom. And this is what I was telling my daughters, because she would always tell me, talk to the younger Sarah. You need to talk to the inner child. At school, like, I didn't have my parents. My mom was too busy. When I was a cheerleader, she never showed up to any of the games. So it was like I was always raised or just surrounded with friends when it came to activities for school. I didn't have my mom, you're going to go to the dance. Let's go look for a dress. So when I had my children, I didn't miss not one single event. Field trips. I would chaperone dances at my children's dances in junior high, and they didn't care. They weren't embarrassed of me. But that was something that I didn't have growing up. I was kind of like that child that was just, dependent on hot meals from school.
I'd come home and have dinner at my friend's house. My grandparents were old, but that's who I was left with because my mom was, again, working, trying to support us because there was no support financially from my dad, and I just remember her getting checks for $2. And she would show me, she was like, look, this is how much you're worth. And again, or we would even pass by animal shelters. And that's where your dad was born. Yeah, growing up, my mom was just, focused on her career, and she met my stepdad, and they were workaholics. So I was home to be by myself, babysitting my younger brother, and then it was just me and him. I got pregnant at 15, and I left home, and I had never gone back since.
Looking back as an adult, and especially this journey to motherhood, it shaped how you were going to show up. And it's beautiful to hear that you didn't miss any of your children's events or functions, because a lot of parents, children that experience what you went through, repeat the toxic cycle, and it's generational, and it passes on from one generation to the next. So where did you find that courage? And I'm going to say courage because it took courage for you to step up and said, I'm not going to repeat the behaviors that my mom or dad exhibited to me. Where did that come from?
When I first had my daughter at 15, had her at 16, I got pregnant at 15, had her at 16. At that moment, I had to grow up, and I had to be mom, and I had to make sure that my daughter knew that I loved her. Even though I was a teen mom, I just knew that I would never not be there for my children. As they grew up, taking them to school, praying with them on their way to school, kissing them goodbye every time. I never got that. My mom never knew how to show affection. And she blames my grandparents because her parents never showed any type of affection to her. So as I grew up as an adult, I started hugging my mom. I started giving her those hugs. I started telling her that I love her. I raised my 2 stepsons. I never wanted them to feel like they were not a part of our family. So it just, what I didn't have, love and affection, comes natural. It just comes natural when it comes to my children. Like, me and my children have a great relationship. And that's because I would never want my children to feel the void of me. I want them to always know that they have their mom.
I'm going to go back to little Sarah, when little Sarah's 5, 6 years old, because there's something powerful here. There's some medicine here. And you now being on this journey of childhood into adulthood, into parenthood, and then into grandmotherhood. Like, very young to be a grandmother, by the way. So
I am. But that's because I started at 16. So, yeah.
What would you tell fathers or even mothers that are workaholics right now, if you can reflect back on little Sarah, what that did to you, what that did to this little girl that is just full of love and innocence, and is now, dabbling into elementary school, and just seeing how other parents are interacting and yours aren't there. What would you tell parents now as an adult going back that you would have wanted, that their children are craving? if their father's not present or their mom's too busy because she's a workaholic, because that's a very common thing.
And I think that's why now legally, like, you can take time off from work to attend those programs for your children. You know, um, back then, I'm pretty sure there wasn't anything like that. So again, my mom was the provider. So I just wish that parents would stop and look at their children. Just look at their children and love on them while they're still here. You know, love on them. You know, so what if your house is a mess? At least you know that it's lived in. And that was one thing as my children were growing up, like, what am I going to do when this house is spotless and my kids are no longer here? You know, that mess I can clean up later. I'm going to be in the moment with my kids. You know, with anything, just, I would tell parents to be present, Don't take for granted that these children are not hurting on the inside, because they are. I chose to numb it. I chose not to talk about it. You know, I just go on. Like, it's just crazy how I can just put blinders on to what happened when I was a child, you know, and just continue to go forward and deal with every issue that arises and just never look back, you know?
Let me call you on that. That you can put blinders on, and you showed up differently than your parents did. You, as a mother, you showed up differently, and you wanted to give them the love that you didn't receive, and you want to give them affection. But do you feel that? And I'm going to just say abandonment because it sounds like it was abandonment, and it may not have affected you as a parent, but I'm sure it may have affected you in your relationships with your siblings or even with partners, because we can put on blinders and we can move forward, but
Right.
subconsciously, when that inner child is hurt and damaged, it shows up, and it shows up in ways that we don't even think. It shows up in how we um, in our workplace, with our relationships at work. It shows up, like I said, with our partners. It can even show up with, like I said, our siblings. Um, do you feel that by having that damaged inner child, that it impacted you in other ways?
I think it made me become, and I'm not saying I'm a perfect mother, because there is no such thing. Our children don't come with, you know, handbooks and how to raise children. I could just do my best, you know, and hope that's good enough for them, you know, and show up for them every time in any matter, child or adults, you know, because of course now my children are adults, you know, and again, I just don't ever stop and think of what I went through. And I think not having my real father and being raised by my dad, I was always looking for a father figure. So when I met my husband, he was ex-husband, he was 11 years older than I was. You know, he was established, he had his own place. Like, so I felt like I was looking for a father figure. And then that's where I feel like I messed up. I guess it's daddy issues, by not having a dad, you know. So now I'm looking for it in men. And yeah, I picked the wrong one. He was a narcissist. He, yeah, he's, you know, and I wish I would have chosen a better father for my children.
And that's the regret a lot of women have. Um, and especially when the kids, constantly say, leave him. But a lot of times the women don't feel like they have the financial means to, or the emotional means to, or even the psychological means to. So they stay in abusive relationship. They stay in toxic relationships, thinking they're doing what's best for the children and for the family.
Right.
But what's really happening, it's just repeating that toxic cycle. And
Yes.
that needs to be changed.
And that's exactly what happened. And um, I was a stay-at-home mom, so I could attend these events and be with my kids. But at the same time, that was me depending on a man. So now I have a man supporting me. And where it got really ugly and it was time to leave, I had nothing to fall back on. I didn't have a job. I had no, education. Again, I had my daughter at 16. I dropped out of school and had to work immediately to support my daughter. And it came to the point where I had to hide my phone in my bra and my purse under my pillow at night. And I was like, you know what? Either I'm going to go to jail or he's going to go to jail. One of us is going to kill each other because it was just so toxic. And I literally left with just whatever I had in my car and moved to my sister's house. And from that's where it began, where I could do this. I can be an independent woman. I can become a manager, which I did. And to hear my daughters today tell me how proud they are of me means the world, because I was able to get myself out of that. And I can show my daughters that they can do the same and they don't have to feel like they need to depend on a man or, that they can do it. They can do it. I literally fell on my face, but I was not going to take no more narcissist abuse from this man. And here I am. I have my own place. I have my children, their love and support. I have my car, and I can say that, wow, like I depended on, and I will never do that again because man will fail you.
So this is a wake up call for all you narcissist men that you think your woman will never leave you.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah's a prime example that she was a stay at home mom and just left with the clothes on her back, her car, and her kids, and she made it. And that's a testament that when a woman has had enough,
Yes.
enough is enough, then there's no turning back. And you're going to walk out. You're not going to look back. And mothers are the most resilient. And your comeback stories, you're going to go and you're going to make things happen because you're not only depending on yourself, but your kids are depending on you.
Right.
And that right there is powerful testament. So nobody's told you this lately. I'm sure your kids have, but I'm proud of you for stepping into your power at that point in your journey and finally putting your foot down and saying enough is enough, because some women will never put their foot down and will
because
last.
these men are so narcissists and they will have you believe that you're going to have nothing. No one's going to want you. You have 6 kids. Like you're a has-been, like, and that's what this man did to me, was put this in my head that that's who I was. And, oh, you just want to go out in the streets. No, that's not what it was. I just choose not to be in this anymore. And I was finally able to exhale. Like I just felt, oh my God, like I'm free. I'm free. Like this man, I'm telling you, was such a narcissist where, and even my children don't have a relationship with him because he's so sick in the head. And that he can just like, yeah. And he's okay with that. And he's okay that his children don't care about him. He's okay with that. But my daughter has to deal with, the void of a father because he treated her like someone off the streets. If she had broke down on the side of the road, do you think that he would want to go save his daughter off the side of the road? No, he'd pick 10 million reasons why the hell did this happen and why didn't you this? And just a typical narcissist man.
I'm listening to your story, and you said that you knew where your dad was at if you wanted. He wasn't seeking you out, but you knew you could find him at the yard.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a happy moment or two that you can remember as a child?
There's one. So when
Okay.
he got involved with a woman and he was in a relationship, he took us to Big Bear. So that was my memory of him, of doing something with us, like a family, going up to Big Bear and staying up there in a cabin. But other memories, it's being parked at a gas station while he's scoring in the bathroom, you know, and then taking us right back home, getting us beef jerky and grape soda. And yeah, and those were very few times.
And then you said your mother married, I believe, when you were 6 years old,
I
and
was
then
mm-hmm.
7, and then stepdad stepped in. And how did that change the dynamic?
So my stepdad happened to be my real dad's friend. So to me, I felt like maybe he was doing my dad a favor and stepping in where my dad couldn't step in, and chose. And he loves me like his own, where, his real daughter, my stepsister, resents me because she feels that he loved me more. And I don't think that it was that case. I think because I was a good daughter to him. I wasn't disrespectful to him. And he's just always, and I have to thank him. And I thanked him after I just got out of this 4-year relationship. Thank you, Dad, for being the man that's never abandoned me. You're the only man. You're the only man that has not left me. And so when I heard about this podcast, I'm like, I feel like talking about it will help me, because I can't sit here and blame myself for these failed relationships. I'm a good woman. I'm a good woman that has been taken advantage of. And I'm tired of that. I'm tired. I'm tired. I just want to focus on my children and my grandkids and my career. I want to be treated like a princess, My last relationship of 4 years, he was amazing. Amazing. Never in a million years did I think that he would walk out on me. And here's the thing with this one. I was at work. And so when I came home to nothing, I felt again like a child being neglected. Like, he left me. Like, I felt like a little child, like he's running away from me. Like my dad ran away. Like why did you have to be such a coward to talk to me? But instead I felt like he abandoned me. And this man came into money, and he left. He left me because he no longer needed me. And never in a million years did I think that he would do that, because we were trying to establish a future together. I paid off his debt. I added him to my credit cards so that way he can build his credit. And when he no longer needed me, he waited until I was at work and he got a U-Haul and he left me. And my children are the ones that showed up for me. So can you imagine if I abandoned my kids to be with a man? How they would feel?
because they were the only ones that came. You know, he took my spices. He took my pots and pans. He took a bed spread. You know, and as days were going, I'm like, oh my God, he took the canister to the utensils. And I'm like, how could he be so cruel to the woman who showed up for him at he had no car. He had no car. And guess who helped him get a car? I did. All for him to leave me. For no reason other than he came into some money and he no longer. And two, he had no kids. He didn't know what it was to be a father. He didn't know what it was to have a family. And my children will always come first. Always. And I think that he didn't like that. I would never choose a man for my children. And I'm so glad I didn't. Because at the end, they came running to me. They came to comfort me when I was hurting. And of course, my friends, you know. But I only have a few. I only have a few friends because I don't trust anybody.
You know, and it's a true testament that in the end, you know, all you have is your small circle, and sometimes that's your children, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's your family, sometimes it's not. And establishing those healthy boundaries and maintaining them is critical, especially when a situation comes up and you need someone to lean on or a shoulder to cry on. And unfortunately, sometimes even family members don't show up when you need them the most. But it's beautiful that your kids showed up and were there for you and didn't put blame on you. Because a lot of times, our children, as they go into adulthood, they can point blame. Well, you should have known better. Oh, well, this, well, this. But you hear that they showed up and were there for you is a powerful testament of the relationship that you've been able to build with your children. And that's powerful. You know, we've talked about your dad, and now your stepdad. Now, you said your dad passed away, your biological dad passed away
He did when I was 19.
when you were 19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Were you ever able to have that conversation with him on why he didn't show up? Or were you just in your early adulthood and you didn't give a shit? Like, it's like, show up, then I'm good.
And that's how it's been all my life. Yeah, I never had that conversation. I remember going to the yard with my daughter, who was at the time only 1 year old, so he can meet his granddaughter. And, you know, he was going through some issues with my stepmom. He was having an affair, so he wanted to get a place. And so we were making plans to move with each other. And
With your dad?
with my dad.
Okay.
We were going to get an apartment together. And then within a week, he was in the hospital and never came back out.
So in the end, there was more communication where you guys were starting to reestablish that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And when that was going on, when you were 19 and now you were having more communication, and now for someone to not show up for you, and then now for you to now bring the ego down, because it's that ego and pride, and say, okay, we're going to do this because you're struggling now. So you need me. I need you. Was there a point that you said, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to start to get the answers or start to get the dad that I always wanted? Or was it too premature?
I never wanted to question him. I think I was just taking what I can get from him at that moment.
Hmm.
I didn't care.
I just wanted to just move forward. And again, just, okay, this is now, and just live in that moment. And he was 42 years old, and he just, that was it. That was it. He was gone. And like, I think, how would things be if he was here? If I did have my dad, would I still jump into the arms of these men? You know? Yeah, I'll never know. I'll never know.
You know, there's a lot of daughters out there that don't have relationships with their fathers, and their fathers are alive. And there's that ego and pride. And even though your dad didn't show up for you, you made it a point to receive him when he needed you the most. What would you tell? And this is specifically for daughters. What would you tell a daughter that has so much anger and hate right now towards her father because he didn't show up, and they still have the opportunity to make amends? What would you tell them?
Open that door. If he comes knocking on that door, open it. Let him in. Let him in. Give him an opportunity to be a dad, or to be just present, even if it's for an hour, a day, a week. Never shut that door. Don't carry that burden. Just open that door. Open that door, because one of these days that door's not going to be knocking. There's not going to be anybody on the other side. Forgive your father, because we don't know what he went through. We don't know why he is the way he is. Love on him. Love your father. He doesn't have to be perfect. But if he's still breathing, don't miss out on that opportunity.
You know, I resonate with that because I have a lot of abandonment issues with my father, and it took a long time to start the process of healing. And you know, it's that ego and pride that shows up. It's we want to keep score, and I have to remind myself. And you said something earlier that just made me think about this. Is, you know, as children, we have these expectations on how we want to be loved, how we want to be cared for, how we want to be, how we want them to show up for us. But there's no instruction manual. And we, as children, we look at movies, you know, the Brady Bunch, and we look at the Cosby Show, and we look at these TV shows, or even we see friends that have these amazing parents. And so we want to hold our parents to these high standards or expectations. But what I've come to realize in my journey with plant medicine is that our parents only love us the way they were loved. And we're so quick to blame our mothers and our fathers for not showing up. But the reality is, and this is going to piss some people off, the real person you should be upset with is your grandparents or your great great grandparents. Because if your great great grandparents couldn't love your grandparents, then how in the fuck can your grandparents love your parents? Then how can we expect our parents to love us the way that we want to be loved, when they're not shown affection, when the word love isn't spoken, when there's no hugs in the home, when especially for, you know, these cultures, you know, and I'll just use Latinos as an example. You come from, you know, another country, and they've worked in the field, so all they know is work, work, work. There's no time for affection. There's no time for cariño. It's just that machismo mentality of Come home, I provide, and that's it.
Right.
And then now it's when does somebody break the cycle? When does somebody step up and say enough is enough? I'm going to break that cycle. So just sharing, what you said is going to be powerful, because I have clients right now who do not want a relationship with a father, and their father's reaching out, but right now they're just not ready. And like you said, you never know how long they're going to be here. And what I've come to realize is that we create these stories in our mind, but sometimes it's exact opposite. I'm surprised at how many times the family kept the father away because they felt he was toxic, or the uncles threatened them, to stay away. So there's all these different stories, but unfortunately, a lot of children that don't have relationships, and the egos and pride is so high, they're never going to get at least a part of the story so they can bring their own closure. So
Right.
thank you for sharing that, because that's powerful.
Thank you.
you know and so as you've moved into to being a parent, and now you've dealt with issues of abandonment from your father, and then you had a biological father that came in and he stepped in and filled a void. And yes, he can fill a void, but there's nothing like a void of a biological father. I don't care what people say. Yes, we can replicate a father, but it's still not your dad. What would be the if there's something you could say to your dad right now, if he was in front of you, what would you say to him?
I would like him to know that I'm not mad. I would have a conversation with him and let him know that we're not in that place anymore. I'm an adult, and just make memories with your grandchildren. You know, there's no looking back, and him being present in my life would be enough for me to not have to have a conversation and just have him in the moment. Like, I don't like confrontation either. So, yeah, I take what I can get and just not, and try to understand what he went through with his parents, and forgive him like I forgive my mom. She's still here, even though she abandoned me too. I was really sick a year ago where I didn't think I was going to make it. Do you think that my mom came to visit me? Not once did she come to see how I was doing. She felt, okay, my daughter came to live with me. My ex-boyfriend was here taking care of me. But I needed my mom. I needed my mom. Yes, I had my children. Yes, I had my boyfriend, but that's not my mom. And I stopped talking to her because here she was trying to make amends with my stepdad and going out to dinner. Meanwhile, I'm hooked up to machines trying to help me breathe. And she couldn't come see me not once. So I had to learn to forgive her also, because she's still breathing. She's still here. And I don't want to live with the regret that I do with my dad. So I chose to forgive her. And Diana was right by my side when I made that decision. We had a guest that came in, never stayed at our hotel, never stayed, classic member. No way they're going to give him a room. I called VIP services and they gave him a room. And so it was his first time. So I'm walking him to the elevator. He walks back out of the elevator, follows me back to my desk. And this man said, write down your mom's initials and fold it up in a paper. And I did.
along with her birth year. And I did that and I gave it to him. And he had me remove my glasses. And he knew my mom's name, right? My mom's name or her birth date, and said, "You need to reach out to your mom. You need to reach out to your mom." And at that moment, I went to the back and I just started crying because I was just like, and that's when my ex-boyfriend had just left me too. So I called my oldest daughter and I said, "Andrea, this is what happened. What do you think I should do?" She's like, "Mom, that could have been like an angel. You need to call grandma, telling you to call her." So I called her and she just broke down in tears and cried and said, "This is the best Christmas present ever. I've been crying every day, praying for this phone call." And she's been very active in my life since. I had a procedure done last week and she came down. She stayed with me, making sure that I had food, making sure, she was present.
That's a wow. Not only is that a powerful story, but that's a true testament. Sometimes the children become the parents,
Mm-hmm.
and our children are our best teachers. And I will continue to say that till the day that I die. And what it sounds like you had this moment where you were willing to just finally let it all go and receive. And in that moment that you did, you've changed the dynamics of your ancestral lineage. I don't think you realize that.
No.
But you've now shifted the way your mom's going to show up. And there may be some bumps along the way because it's hard to unravel 50, 60, 70 years of the same toxic patterns and behaviors. But just know that you getting just a glimpse of it, I'm sure is giving you the hope that the dynamics of the relationship is going to continue to heal. But it's going to take you to continue to guide that healing because you've now become the parent.
Right.
Wow.
Right. And because I don't like confrontation and I just want everyone to be okay, you know? Um, and of course it's going to take time, but again, she's working on that and I will take that.
And what are you doing, Sarah, to heal your inner child? Because this all starts with the inner child. And are there any steps you're taking now in adulthood to start to say, okay, number one, I don't want my children to go through what I went through. But even more importantly, I don't want my grandchildren
Mm.
to go through what I went through.
And I think that's why I'm so active in their lives as well. And I was buying stuff for them to start school. And of course, I'm going a little big, they're my grandchildren. So Aaliyah is like, wow, like when we were going to school, like you didn't get that for me. And I'm like, you know what, Aaliyah? I go, I'm blessed that I can do that for my grandchildren. Like I'm sorry I didn't get to do that for you guys, but I get to do it for Andrea's children, you know? And Brandon's daughter, my stepson, sent my granddaughter money because she's starting school too. So it makes me feel I want them to know that I'm here, and with me being sick, I don't know when I'm going to go. So I want to make sure that I spend as much time as possible. And if that's, letting my work know that I can't come in because my grandkids have, a Christmas play, I'm not missing moments. I'm not missing no moments. My daughter had to work, and, I'm showing up because there's somebody
there's going to be somebody in that audience that my grandchildren are going to look and be like, that's my grandma. That's my aunt. My grandchildren don't know what it is to not have anyone in that audience. Yeah. I will not let them know that feeling like I felt.
How important is that to show up for your children and your grandchildren's events? And I know you've touched on it, but how important is that to a child that's sitting there looking in the audience and then not seeing anybody there?
Means the world. It means the world. And again, I don't live close to them. I'm about 40 minutes out from them, but I will wake up early and make sure that I am in that audience, and my grandson or my granddaughter will see that there's somebody there for them. And I will have to be sick in the hospital for me to miss anything. I will not have my grandchildren know the feeling that I had as a child.
You know, you're breaking the toxic cycle in your family lineage. That's powerful.
Yeah, I will not let them know what that feeling is. I refuse. And my children, my children played sports. I was there cheering them on the sidelines because I refuse for them to feel what I felt as a child of not having anybody there. Anybody.
And as we start to close out this, which has been a very powerful episode, and thank you for being so vulnerable and just sharing your story, because there's so many powerful nuggets in here that are going to help so many families. You touched on your stepson, and you said that you never wanted to make him feel left out. And I know those weren't the exact words, but you didn't want him to feel the way you felt growing up. And you're no longer with the dad, but how's your relationship with your stepson?
So going back, I've raised them since they were 5 and 8. My husband had custody of them. And so whatever my daughter got, they got. I never wanted these boys to know or fill the void of a parent. And so I felt like it's not their fault that their mother is the way they are, the way she is. It's not their fault. We couldn't make her become a mother. We could not make her want to be a mother. As much as I would let her know, if you want, we can, take turns going on field trips with him. No, she wanted nothing to do with it. But you know what? I'll be damned if I don't show up, because I will be there. And so, again, he calls me mom, till this day. I mean, they're in my life. My oldest, he's kind of, he's with the new girl and he's just doing his own thing. But I never not once disconnected. I've never not once made them feel like they're my stepchildren. They've always been my kids. So when I say I have children, like I have 6. But we have a great relationship. When he turned 18, I got him a job with me at Ross, and he ended up becoming a manager as well. And my daughter-in-law and him, they allowed me to be in the room when my granddaughter was born. And again, I just don't want him to ever fill that void of not having a mom.
That's a true testament to your character. And thank you for doing that. Not only for doing
Not
that.
the children's fault. A lot of the times, these step parents are so resentful towards their stepchildren. And it's like, why? They didn't ask for this situation. They didn't ask for their parents to not be together. So why should I have to be an ugly person? Like, they deserve to be loved too.
No, thank you for that, because there's a lot of, and I'll just close it with this part is my youngest daughter, she's 20 now, but she had my granddaughter when she was 18, going to be 19. And I'm showing up different for my granddaughter than I did for my kids. And, I hate to keep using the excuse that I didn't know any better, but I didn't know any better. Like, I didn't know the toxicity that I was instilling in my children, in the household, in the family. And so I never understood how they say that the love of a grandchild is different than love of a child. And to me, it's like a do over. It's like a makeover.
It is. It's like holding your child all over again.
And sometimes I start to feel like my kids are a little resentful of the love that my little Bella gets. She's 15 months old. And I have to be conscientious of that because I'm always so quick to run and go and hold her and hug her. And even though my children, I have three daughters, they're 20, 22, and 27, I have to remember that they still crave my love.
Yeah.
And as much attention as I give my granddaughter, I have to make sure that I spread it with my other children because there's been little blowups, there's been little mishaps, and I'm starting to see that they're watching. They're watching everything that Dad's doing, and they're going back and they're playing this story of the things that I didn't do for them or how I didn't show up for them. So it's for you fathers out there or even mothers that are starting the process of healing and now you're showing up for your grandchildren, just know that that brings its own set of problems with your adult children because resentment will kick in. So it's a balancing act, and just be prepared for it because
Oh yeah.
the shit show is going to start, and they're not children anymore, and they're going to voice whatever they feel, and they have their own minds, and they've got their own perceptions on things, and shit's going to hit the fan. And if you're not careful, you just may not be in your grandchildren's life. So be very careful with that.
You have to be very mindful. And again, like I have appointments with my granddaughter to FaceTime her. And so I'll FaceTime Savannah, my daughter, and she's like, well, what about me, Mom? Like, you don't want to talk to me? Like, oh, no, where's Ayla? And when she came over, I made sure to give Savannah a hug. Like, I love you too, but I love Ayla more. I'm sorry at this point. She's, and I always tell her, I said, Ayla, Grandma loves you and you make Grandma's heart happy. Like, yeah, it's loving your children all over again, and it's a beautiful thing. And I love that I may be single, but I have my kids. Like I have my children, like I have my kids and I can go and barbecue at my daughter's house. And and I don't have a man to hold me back from my kids, because they'll abandon you. They'll leave you, but your children will always remain.
Closing thoughts as we end this powerful episode and as we've dived into your life, the ups, the downs, and everything all around. What are your closing thoughts for mothers, fathers, children? What's the closing message that you want to leave that not only are other people going to see this, thousands of people, but your children and great grandchildren are going to look at this one day and say, wow, that's Grandma. That's Mom.
Love on your children. Love on your children. Don't take anything for granted. Don't live in the past because the past doesn't live there anymore. Just move forward. Just move forward and making new memories. And I think that's one thing about me is that I never look back. I never looked back. I've always looked forward. And so this helped me, I've never talked about it. So I would just say, we don't know what they went through. We don't know why they are the way they are, but doesn't mean that your heart has to be cold. Doesn't mean that you have to be that way.
Well, whenever you're ready to sit in a deep meditation ceremony and go back and face that inner child, I would be more than happy to gift you a ceremony. with our circle to be able to just sit and start to release whatever still is holding you back or no longer serving you.
Thank you.
And for those of you out there that are ready to treat a woman like a princess and aren't going to play games, Sarah will be available in the near future. But right now, she's focused on her health. She's focused on her kids first. And she has her high standards of she wants to be treated like a princess, just like every other woman does. Sarah, thank you for your time and for being
Thank you,
vulnerable.
Edward.
It's a beautiful episode. And Fatherhood Voices. I keep saying my team, we got to change the name, even though we have motherhood voices and childhood voices. But it's not just about fathers anymore. It's about children telling their stories on how mothers, fathers didn't show up and how it's impacted them. The highs, the lows, the goods, the bads, the ups and downs. Thank you for joining another episode of Fatherhood Voices.
Thank you for having me, Edward.
Thank you.